Okay. Let's talk about school. Ugh. Yeah, with the kids back at school now, I was thinking it would be a good time to talk about a very interesting subject for me, the subject of school. Ugh. School for me is basically where my life took a complete U-turn. I think it's fair to say that my life changed literally overnight. Let's start right back at the very beginning with playgroup. Playgroup for me, I remember liking it. I was very young, I was 3. I went to a little playgroup down on the main street opposite the primary school where I lived. It's kind of a rundown place now, but it used to be quite nice. We played games and things like that, and sung some songs and that sort of stuff. I had quite a few friends, I remember. However, there was one thing that was always interesting, and of course at the time I didn't know why, no one knew why, my parents didn't know why, but I would cry a lot. I would cry so much for no particular reason. And I remember on occasion I would just stand there in the middle of the room and I would just be crying for no particular reason whatsoever. I would just be standing there sobbing to myself quietly, not completely bawling, but just, that sort of thing. And I distinctly remember, quite vividly, one of the teachers just looking at me and she kept on asking me, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" And I kept on saying, "Nothing! Nothing! What's the matter? Nothing! What is it? Nothing!" That was the way it went. It was just a ritualistic thing. It was so strange. I didn't know why I was crying. They didn't know why I was crying. My parents didn't know why I was crying. I would just cry. And even to this day, 30 odd years later, I have absolutely no idea why. Obviously, it must have had something to do with the Aspergers, but, because bearing in mind I did have Aspergers then, we didn't know that I did, but I did, and it must have had something to do with that, because, playgroup wasn't a part of my routine. I did have a routine. It wasn't much of a routine at that age, of course, but, playgroup, I guess, was the beginning of interference in my life. I do remember though, however, one time I was stood there in the middle of the room, crying, tears trickling down my face, and suddenly my mum was there, and it turns out that they'd called her, and she came to pick me up early, and suddenly I was cheerful again. Now, of course, that kind of raises the question, maybe it was because I was away from my mum. Well, it may come across like that on first appearances, but I don't think that actually had anything to do with it. I just think it was to do with routine. As I say, even at that age, I did have a routine, not much of one, but I did have one, and being sent to playgroup, the start of the whole school thing, that just kind of threw it all out of whack, and I think the crying was just a sort of a symptom of that, really. That's what I think, personally. Nursery school was kind of similar to playgroup, except nursery was where we were starting to learn a very basic rule when you're a kid, one that I have mixed feelings about. Nursery was where I came across 4 words. I came across 4 words for the very first time. Well, the first time where it actually made sense. And those 4 words were the 4 words that I would become very familiar with as a child. Very familiar. Every child becomes familiar with these 4 words, and those 4 words are do as you're told. Do as you're told. Yes, those 4 words, they haunted me throughout my childhood, as they do for every child. You see, nursery school was the first time that those 4 words were thrust at me, and I found out what they actually meant. You see, again, this goes to routine. This goes back to routine. I'm playing with my cards here, which is the noise you can hear. And my throat's kind of dry too, so forgive me if I keep swigging from my huge bottle of water here. I'm on my 8th bottle at the moment. Yes, it was all about routine and do as you're told. Also became a nuisance to me when it came to my routine. I'll give you an example. You see, nursery, as I say, was kind of similar to playgroup. It was all play. It was play. It was freedom. They gave us the freedom to do what we wanted. We played. Every morning we would sit on the carpet, and the teacher would sit in front of us and say, "Right now, what would you like to do? I want to go and do this. Play with the blocks. Play with puzzles. Whatever. What would you like to do?" Blah, blah, blah. And that was the way it went for a few weeks, months, whatever, for a short time. However, then came one morning where the teacher would select some children, a small group of us, 3, 4, 5, to go and do something with the other teacher. There were 2 or 3 teachers there. To go and do something specifically with the other teacher, like paint a picture or that sort of thing. And one morning, of course, I was picked. You can have and Jonathan. I remember saying to the teacher, "I don't want to do that because up to now you've allowed me to do whatever I want, and now suddenly you're asking me to do something else which I don't want to do." And of course they said, "Well, no, we'd like you to do that, please. Do as you're told." Suddenly, I'm starting to feel very anxious. I remember this. I was about 4, 5 maybe. And yes, because I was suddenly told to do something I didn't particularly want to do, but I felt anxious because I was suddenly thrown out of the routine that I had become so used to up to that point, which was, you can do whatever you want, basically. So do as you're told. Those 4 words started to really haunt me from that point onwards, because I didn't want to do as I was told. Now, I know that sounds kind of familiar to a lot of people. Kids don't want to do as they're told. I get that. But for me, it was a different reason, you see. I didn't want to do as I was told, but not simply because I wanted to be defiant, not simply because I wanted to be naughty or anything like that, or disobedient. Simply because do as you're told threw me out of my routine. That's why. Because, of course, people with autism and Aspergers and that sort of thing, any kind of autistic spectrum disorder, routine is absolutely vital. And anything outside of the routine is absolutely horrifying. And it makes you anxious and nervous and upset. And when I was asked to do this thing with the other teacher, I did do it. I didn't burst into tears and say, "I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it." I did do it, but I was very quiet. I remember this quite vividly, actually. I was very quiet, I didn't say much, I was kind of anxious, I withdrew into myself, and I did this kind of strange doodly painting, in maybe a bit of a sulk, really. I was sulking a bit, I guess, but it made me depressed. It made me depressed to suddenly not be doing what I wanted. And to be doing something against my will. I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand why I was suddenly being forced to do this thing that I didn't want to do. This didn't happen yesterday, and it didn't happen the following day. So why now? Why has this happened? That was whirring in my head. My head was so loud, and questions in my head. Why is this happening? Why now? Why this moment? Why me? Why have they asked me to do this? Why? Which of course just made me shut down. It just made me shut down. I shut down completely. I didn't say anything, do it. I just did the painting, and it was a complete mystery to me. Anyway, that was the main lesson I learned in nursery. Those 4 words: do as you're told. And it wasn't the last time I heard those 4 words, believe me. But nursery, other than that, it was okay. I kind of enjoyed it for the most part. As I say, it wasn't that much different to playgroup. It was very kind of ritualistic as well. I kind of liked that, which is probably the biggest reason why I shut down when I was suddenly thrown out of that routine, because the routine was we come to nursery, we sit down, read a book, play, go outside, play, come inside, eat a segment of fruit, apple, pear, whatever, drink blackcurrant or orange squash, have another story, and then go home. That was the ritual every single day. It was very ritualistic. Come in, have a story, play, go outside, play, come in, have some fruit, a fruit segment, not chocolate for some reason, drink blackcurrant or orange squash, this horrible cheap stuff that tasted horrible, and then have another story, and then go home. Every single day. And then suddenly I was told to do as I was told. So anyway, nursery. Strange. Playgroup and nursery, strange places. Very strange places, especially for a young kid with Aspergers. One time at nursery, we did a sort of a Christmas play. There was a book, I don't know if people remember this, but there was a book, I think it was a series of books actually, called Mr. Bear. Mr. Bear goes to blah 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 blah, Mr. Bear does blah 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 blah, Mr. Bear blah blah blah, and of course one book was Mr. Bear's Christmas. And what we did for Christmas was a sort of play where we did Mr. Bear's Christmas, and we had a teacher read out the book, and we simply acted out the actions of the book. I got to play. There's a teacher, and I loved playing the teacher. I had rabbit's ears and everything. I was a rabbit, and I had a mortarboard hat with rabbit ears sticking out of the top, which I loved. And I got to have face paint, and I even got to improvise. I improvised my way through Mr. Bear's Christmas. I also got to play Mr. Bear, but I remember I was kind of defiant playing Mr. I didn't want to play Mr. Bear. I took some convincing by the teachers. I remember that they said, "Oh, just put the outfit on," because there was this costume that I had to wear. They said, "Just put the costume on, John, and see if you like it." Blah, blah, blah. And I did it. I did like it, I must admit. I didn't enjoy it as much as playing the teacher, but I did do it, and I kind of liked it more than I thought I would. So yeah, that was my first taste of real acting. Primary school was interesting where I was, because I went to a place called Bodrigi. Bodrigi, Bodriggy, Bodrigi. Well, back then it was Bodrigi School. Now it is Bodrigi Academy, I think. I think that's what it's called. Yes, lower school was where I learned a lot. I still came across those 4 words. I enjoyed primary school for the most part, I think. There were some ups and downs, some rough moments. I did get teased a little bit and left out. I wasn't exactly bullied. There was never anything like physical. There was never any like physical bullying or anything like that. But I did get teased and left out. I didn't really have groups of friends. I did play with kids sometimes, but some other times I would just sort of keep to myself and pace up and down the playground, thinking, "Why am I here?" But a lot of lessons that I learned at primary school were mostly life lessons. I learnt a lot of life, which I personally believe are the most important lessons you can learn, especially at a young age. I'll give you an example. One life lesson I learnt when I was in the upper site, when I was an older kid. Sometimes we would be allowed, in the summer when it was really hot, we would be allowed to play up on a playing field, a football field, for playtime. One time we were there, and this huge wooden fence, this really long wooden fence would surround the upper field, and that would lead out onto the outside, onto the pavement. One day, of course, we were playing on the field, and we discovered that there was a bush surrounding the fence, but we discovered that there was a gap, there was a hole in this bush leading through to the outside of the field. And of course, this is where I encountered peer pressure for the first time. And this was where I probably learnt my most valuable life lesson. Do not give in to peer pressure. We discovered the hole in the fence leading to the outside, the pavement and then the road. As soon as we came across the hole, we started to bet each other to crawl through the hole, the way that kids do. And of course, me being the one that was left out, being the runt of the litter, as it were, all the fingers started pointing at me. Jonathan, you do it. And of course, I started to think to myself, wow, this could be great. This could be the opportunity I need to get people to like me, get the kids to like me, get them to be my friends, etc. And I was like, oh, I'm not sure. I know it's wrong, but I really shouldn't. Oh, but Jonathan, you can do it. You'd be so good at it. You'd be so cool. We think you're so really cool if you'll do it. Please, will you do it, Jonathan? Well, I'm not sure. You see, I know that I shouldn't. You see, I know that I'm not allowed to do it and that it's wrong and it's unsafe and, I really don't think that I should. Oh, but Jonathan, you don't understand. If you crawl through the gap, you're going to be the greatest kid in school. You're going to get such a great reputation. Everybody will like you. It's going to be awesome. Will you please do it, please? Well, I don't know. I mean, what if I get into trouble? I mean, one of you might tell the teachers. Oh, don't be so daft, Jonathan. Of course we won't tell the teachers. We're not going to tell the teachers at all. We promise we won't tell. If you crawl through the hole, we promise. Cross our hearts, we will not tell the teachers. Well, all right. Miss! Jonathan's crawled through the hole! Miss! Jonathan's crawling through the hole! Look, miss! Jonathan's crawled through the hole! Look! Jonathan's crawled through the hole! Miss!
Do not give in to peer pressure.
I have taken that life lesson with me every single day from that day to this. And I have never given in to peer pressure since then, and I never will again. If your friends tell you to do something and you know it's wrong, don't do it. It doesn't matter what it is. If you know it's wrong, don't do it. Whether it's crossing the railroad tracks, daring someone to do something, smoking, drinking, drugs, whatever. It doesn't matter. If you know it's wrong and if you don't want to do it because you know it's wrong, don't let anyone convince you to do it because they will get you into trouble. Interestingly enough, I learned something about myself just recently from watching a video of me at primary school, and I think I've kind of come up with some reasons why I might not have been the favourite kid in the school. We did a sort of Christmas play again. The whole school did a Christmas play. And I actually had a sort of not a leading part, but a speaking part. And the idea was that I come in and say some lines, and I walk along a table as some of the other kids say some lines behind the table, and they serve me some food and that sort of thing. And I recently watched the video of that, and I was actually shocked. I was shocked to discover that I was being bossy as hell to the other kids in that video. Now, here's the interesting thing. I can remember this play quite well. I can remember doing the play, I can remember speaking the words, saying the lines, I can remember walking down the table, giving my lines to the other kids, them giving their lines to me. I can remember quite a lot of it, but the strange thing is, I can't remember being so bossy. When I was watching the video, I was shocked to see myself actually bossing the other kids about quite a bit. I was telling them to hold this up and to put that down and to say one line, to say the other line. I was saying, now you hold this up like this. Now you put that down. You say that bit first. And there was even a moment where the audience started to applaud early after something is said, and you can see me in the background going, and I don't remember doing any of that. I don't remember being bossy to the kids. I don't remember saying things out other than my lines to the kids. I can't remember anything outside of the lines that I was supposed to say, or doing anything outside of what I was supposed to do. But then, yet there I was doing it. And this really hit home when I watched it, because that kind of made me realise that Aspergers, of course, was still very much present in me there, because today, of course, when I say and do things because of my Aspergers, I don't know I'm doing them. I'm not aware of it, which makes perfect sense to me. Now, of course, back then, we didn't know that I had Aspergers, but it makes sense to me that that's probably at least one of the reasons why I might have been left out a lot, because I was the bossy kid. I was the kid that did and said these things and, was troublesome to the other kids. Oh, it's Jonathan, he's coming, he's going to boss us around now, let's not play with him, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, that's kind of a bit of a shocking thing to discover, but very interesting, certainly interesting. Through most of my younger childhood, I sometimes dreamt of secondary school. I dreamt of this, sort of stereotypical life that I'd been watching on television, hanging out with the older kids and having a locker, my own key, a bit of privacy, a bit of independence. I dreamt of working really hard, different classes, different subjects. I dreamt of taking A-levels, GCSEs, getting some official form of qualifications to prepare myself for adulthood. I did occasionally dream of all of these things. It was, I was genuinely looking forward to the adolescent part of my life. I only got to enjoy it for about a week. I was enjoying it. For the few days that I actually was there at secondary school, Hale Community School this is, I think I was there for about maybe a week or two. I can't remember exactly. I've wiped a lot of it from my mind for various reasons, I'm sure, but I'll say about a week. I was enjoying it. I got a locker, something I always wanted to have, a locker to put things in, to take things out, to have my own little space. I got all my books together. Great photo of my sister and I in the garden wearing my new uniform with a big bright smile on my face. One night I was lying in bed and I was feeling incredibly sick from whatever. I don't want to get into that, but I was feeling incredibly sick. And it didn't go away. I wasn't ill. It didn't come to anything. I just felt very, very sick in my stomach. I lay there for hours, 3, 4, I think. And somehow I finally managed to drift off to sleep, and I thought that was the end of it. But the following morning when I woke up, I still had this terrible knot in my stomach. Terrible knot in my stomach. I said to my mum, I don't want any breakfast this morning. I'm not hungry. And the entire day at school, I managed to get through it somehow, but I had this knot in my stomach the whole day. It felt terrible. I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't eat anything at all that day. And as I say, somehow I managed to get through the entire day without breaking down, without bringing it up. School came to an end. I walked to the end of the road where there was a phone box and I phoned my dad. Normally I walked to and from school because, as I say, it was a very local community. Everything was very close to each other. The schools were close. So I always unless it was raining or whatever, I always walked to and from school. Most of us did. But this time, because of the way I was feeling, I didn't want to walk home. So I got to the phone box at the end of the road, and I phoned my dad, and he came to pick me up in the car. The second I got into the car, I burst into tears. I broke down and told him what had happened. And of course, the initial response was, "Oh, all right, never mind, John. You know, you've had a bit of a bad day. It's okay. It'll be better tomorrow." And that was the end of it. I calmed down, and we thought that was the end of it. The next day, for some reason, I was just from that moment a different person, completely. The day after that day, I just broke down again. Feeling sick, feeling ill, knots in my tummy. Not being able to focus properly, not being able to concentrate. I just broke down uncontrollably. I could no longer control it. So I had to go home again. My dad came, picked me up. And this is the way it was. I had somehow managed to get myself into a cycle, my brain had been reprogrammed somehow to associate school with something bad, with a negative. So from that point on, every single day pretty much, I just kept breaking down in tears, breaking down every single day, feeling sick, anxiety, knots in my stomach, not being able to focus, concentrate. My brain wasn't in it anymore. My brain wasn't there anymore for it. My mind had gone completely somewhere else at this point. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And my dad had to come and pick me up every single day. And of course, my parents started to get frustrated and impatient because they needed me to be at school so that they could work. Because obviously the more I was home, the more they couldn't go to work, or my dad couldn't, because my mum was a teacher. So obviously she couldn't take time off work. Well, neither could my dad, but my dad had to. To this day, I don't really know what it was that triggered this depression, this funk that I fell into. It's been discussed that maybe it was the transition from primary to secondary school. Maybe I wasn't ready for it. Maybe it was such a dramatic change that it triggered something in my brain and my brain shut down. That's a possibility. Don't know for sure, but that's a possibility. Something was just triggered in my mind, and I couldn't do it. I just could not attend school anymore. I couldn't. Despite weeks, months, years of trying to get me to go to school. Different techniques were used, punishments were brought in, didn't work. Enforcement techniques were brought in, they didn't work. Psychiatrists were brought in, they did their best of course, but didn't work. For some reason, no one knew. No one could tell what was wrong. No one knew how to deal with me. I didn't know how to deal with me. Whenever someone asked me what the problem was, I couldn't tell them because I didn't know. I didn't know myself. I didn't know what the problem. I didn't know why I was crying all the time. I was crying for years, day after day. Dehydration, crying, frustration, red face, furrowed brow, exhaustion. So yeah, we even tried changing my school. I changed from Hale Community to a place called Mounts Bay in Penzance. That kind of helped for a short time, I guess you could say, but not really. I never got back into the swing of it, not properly. I wasn't able to. It was decided eventually that I can't remember the process of this because I was younger, but I remember that it was decided that I take an IQ test. I was at home at this point. I'd stayed at home for a long time with my dad. My dad had to stay home from his work to look after me, which nearly caused him to lose his job. things got so bad at home. Didn't know what else to do. But it was decided that I take an IQ test at home. And a lady, forgive me, I've forgotten her name now, but a lady came to the house and gave me an IQ test where I had to put different puzzles, things. I was shown pictures, and I had to find out what was wrong with the picture. There were irregularities within each picture, and I had to guess which. I had to find out where the irregularity was. I had to do some things with building blocks. I was asked questions to do with numbers and math, memorization, words, spelling, that sort of thing. And I've since been told, I wasn't told, I didn't know this at the time, but I've since been told that on her way out of the house when she was leaving, she turned to my dad and said, Aspergers. Definitely Aspergers. He's got Aspergers. I was unofficially diagnosed right then and there. That was the day that things kind of got better, really. Knowing that I had Aspergers did change things. I think the main problem that I had when I was out of school, when I was at home, was not being able to explain what the problem was, what the issues were, what I was thinking, what I was feeling. Simply because I did not know. I did not know. I was just as lost as my parents, my family, everyone was. When they were it made them so frustrated when they were trying to find out what the problem was by asking me. And because my disability is up here, I can't see it. When someone has a physical disability, you can see that they have a physical disability. So there's no frustration as to what the cause of the problem is, because it's right there. You see, it's right there in front of you. If someone doesn't have any legs, for example, you can see that they need to have a wheelchair or artificial legs or whatever. You don't need to ask so many questions. But of course, when it's up here and it's not visible, then it becomes a lot more difficult, a lot more frustrating, because you have to find an answer. You still have to find an answer to the problem, but you also have to find out what the problem is, which of course is more difficult if the problem is here and you can't see it. I can't see it because I can't see it inside my brain. That was what caused most of the frustration, I think, with all of us when I was out of school, because people were trying to find out what my problem was and I couldn't tell them, which of course led naturally, through no fault of their own, led people to believe that I was simply being naughty and defiant and disobedient. So I got shouted at quite a bit, and I got punished quite a bit, and that sort of thing, which of course made me worse, because I felt that I was being tortured and punished, for no reason. I wasn't doing anything wrong as far as I was concerned. I was in trouble. But this whole idea about school, and here we kind of come to one of the points I'm trying to make here, is I've never really agreed with school that much. I agree with education. Education, of course, is, no question, important. You need to be educated in life. I love education. I love learning. I've always loved learning. I love learning and discovering new things. I have nothing against education at all. It's school that I have a problem with. You see, in this modern, day and age that we now live in, 2020, we've been in the 21st century now for 20 years, and things are progressing at such a fast rate, technology and the way we live our lives and that sort of thing. However, when you think about it, school as a process, although of course schools, things in a school have changed quite a bit, they've got better technology themselves and so on, but if you think about it, the whole process of school that hasn't really changed that much at all in the last century or more. What I mean is, school is still about kids going to a room, sitting at a desk and listening to someone talk at them for several hours every day. And to me, that needs improving. because to me, to someone like me with Aspergers, that makes it all very difficult, because at school I was never paying attention. Not really. Sometimes I did. Okay, maybe saying never is exaggerating. Most of the time I wasn't paying attention. Most of the time I'd be staring out of the window and looking at birds flying, because to me, watching birds flying out of the window was much more interesting than listening to someone at the front of the class talking at me about the Roman Empire and things like that. Not interesting at all. So it isn't education that I have a problem with. It's the way that it's provided that I have a problem with. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Not for people like me. It doesn't. And there are people like me out there, whether you like it or not. There are people like me out there who have similar or the exact same situations to go through. Invisible disabilities. So it's this whole idea about just because the government, decides that we are ready for this particular kind of education at this particular kind of time in our lives doesn't mean we are. And just because it's the law, to send a child to a school doesn't mean it's going to be all fine and dandy and simple and easy as pie, because what if that child has a disability that means that they can't do school in the conventional sense? Imagine for a second that it was the law for every single person in the UK to do a handstand every single day, all of their lives, okay? Just imagine that for a second, unusual as that sounds. Now imagine that you don't have any arms. Just, think of the people that are born without any arms. What the hell are they supposed to do? It's the law to stand on your hands every single day, to do a handstand every day. You are legally obliged to do that, but you can't because you haven't got any arms. So what the hell are you supposed to do? Where does that leave you? Well, that was where I was. And I really do believe that there are other people out there in similar or the same situations. Just because it's a legal obligation to send your children to school to get their education. But what if they can't for some reason? What if they have something like I do? What if they have some sort of autistic, spectrum thing? What if they have Aspergers? What if there's something about school that makes them completely shut down? That makes them just slip into a depression? That they... Where does that leave them? Just because the government says that your child is ready doesn't mean they are. If a child is being naughty, naughtiness has limitations, you see. That's what discipline's for. You see, that's what punishment's for. Naughtiness will, eventually runs down, and and it's controllable. But does a child scream and yell and become absolutely exhausted with crying and tears for months and months and months and years at a time without wearing out, just for the sake of being naughty? You have to remember, just try to remember that your children, they are people too. They are humans too. And do as you're told. It doesn't always work. And that's not always because of naughtiness. That's not always because of a child, being deliberately defiant. There can be other reasons. So after my diagnosis, life did get kind of easier for all of us. My dad went back to work, and I stayed at home for many, many years after that. I was brought out of school at 14, straight after my diagnosis. Looking back now, I wish that I hadn't come out of school, because I didn't go to college either. I didn't get A-levels or GCSEs, which of course are vital for future life and future work and things. I haven't had much in the way of jobs since then. another video, another story. I did go to university many years after that. Again, another video, another story. I will cover all of this, but I did leave school at the age of 14 after I was diagnosed with Aspergers, simply, I guess, to try to start again with life, really, so my family could start again, try and become a bit more focused. Many years later, I managed to get into university at Falmouth. I'm going to get into that in another video. That's another story. But I think I've covered pretty much everything I can as far as school goes for the basics. I'm sure I'll cover a lot more in more detail as we go along. We're only on the second video, but that's basically the outline of my experience with school so far. Any questions, comments? I would say you could leave them in the comment section. You probably won't. But in the meantime, until the next time, next video, this is me signing off, and remember to aspire.